When I was first introduced to the world of custom PCs back in 2014, the fastest new video card was the GeForce GTX 980. Like many other high-end cards at the time, this card came with 4GB of onboard video memory. To me, this seemed like a completely insane amount of VRAM. My 7-year-old computer only had 4GB of system RAM, and its 8600 GTS graphics card only had 256MB of VRAM. What I didn't know at the time is that just 1 year after my prehistoric graphics card came out, you could actually buy a brand new graphics card with 4GB of VRAM. This is the Nvidia Quadro FX 5800, a top-of-the-line workstation card released in November of 2008. To say that this card seemed overkill at the time would be a massive understatement. Nvidia's highest-end single GPU gaming card, the GTX 285, only had 1GB of VRAM. The extra VRAM came with a cost though, with the FX 5800 retailing for nearly $3,500 compared to the 285's much more sensible $360. Adjusted for inflation, that's nearly $5,200 on just a single video card. Nowadays, you can find these cards for about $30, making them just a slightly worse investment than buying Intel stock a month ago. As far as the other specs go, this card was nearly identical to the GTX 285. Both have a fully unlocked GT200B graphics core with 240 shaders, 80 TMUs, 32 ROPs, and a 512-bit memory bus. The one area the FX 5800 takes a major loss is clock speeds. While the FX 5800 has 4 times the memory, its memory is clocked over 30% slower than the 285, leading to significantly reduced memory bandwidth. I don't have a GTX 285 on hand to compare it to, but what I do have is a GTX 275, a slightly cut down version of the GT200B core with only 28 ROPs, a slightly smaller memory bus, and 896MB of RAM. Despite the smaller memory bus, its clock speed advantage still gives it a sizable bandwidth advantage over the Quadro. I've attempted to overclock the Quadro to get closer to the other cards, but the most that I've been able to achieve is 700 MHz in the core and 960 MHz on the memory. For my test system, I'm using an Ivy Bridge Xeon E5 1680 V2 overclocked to 4.5 GHz with 16GB of RAM running Windows 10. This is significantly newer than the cards that I'm testing today, but I wanted to eliminate any potential bottlenecks to focus strictly on the GPU performance of these cards. Grand Theft Auto 5 was the first game I decided to test, with it being notoriously VRAM heavy for a DirectX 10 game. The Quadro completely slaughters the 275 in this test, delivering an average of 52.75 FPS compared to 32.4. Of the 5 times that I ran this benchmark on the 275, I was only able to get 2 good runs without the game completely crashing and burning on me. This game is probably the best case scenario for the Quadro, as GTA is a very VRAM heavy game, especially with high resolution textures. As much as I hate to admit it, I can't review a graphics card from the late 2000s without testing Crysis. I cranked the settings up just to see if I could see any benefits from the additional VRAM, but this game is just too old to take advantage of it. Both cards perform nearly identical, putting up around 24 FPS average. In Killing Floor 2, the Quadro takes its first loss to the GTX 275, only putting up 54 FPS compared to 59. This result confused me at first, as when I monitored memory usage on the FX 5800, it used nearly 2GB in this game. I'd be willing to bet that the difference between these two cards is just within the margin of error, as this game doesn't have a built-in benchmark tool. The Quadro does produce better 0.1% lows, however, making for a noticeably smoother gaming experience. Similar to Crysis, in Tomb Raider both cards perform nearly identically, delivering about 70 FPS. This isn't surprising, as the recommended VRAM for this game is only 1GB. Both of these cards provide a more than playable experience in this game. Metro Redux surprised me a bit. Given the graphical intensity of this game, I expected similar results to GTA 5, where the FX 5800 runs away with a clean victory. But at 1080p medium, both cards deliver a nearly identical 46 to 47 FPS. To see if I could get the game to use some more VRAM, I cranked the settings all the way up to very high, only to get the same result. At very high, both cards produce a very cinematic 24 FPS. The Quadro FX 5800 falls in an awkward position in PC hardware history. Despite its massive frame buffer, the lack of support for newer APIs like DirectX 11 hinders its longevity. The games that this card can run were largely developed with the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 in mind, systems that had less than half a gigabyte of video memory to work with. By the time the games were developed to take advantage of more video memory, nearly all games required DirectX 11. Nevertheless, the FX 5800 is still a gaming powerhouse. While its original intention was the exact opposite of playing games, it holds its own against the highest end video cards of the era. If you're like me and you're interested in cool and unique hardware like the FX 5800, consider sticking around on the channel. I've got plenty more coming, hopefully sooner than the 5 years since my last video. But until then, thanks for watching and I'll see you guys later.